Sorry, I don't love you. A phrase I've grown accustomed to. Cause with you something isn't wrong, something isn't wrong, something isn't right. I wish you could be happy.
Hey everyone, welcome to Geekdom is back. This week, Jacob Tender is returning, and we finally have a strictly music topic going on here today. I know there's a little music note in the logo, so it's about time. Episode 22, I believe this will be, and Jacob, as you guys know, has been on the podcast before, but we definitely have music in common, not only in the bands we listen to, but some of the tech and streaming services we've used as well. But before we dive in, Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Is this seriously the first time you've talked music on the show?
I think so, because I know I've had music people on, but it was always to talk about like Star Wars, or I did a basketball episode with Joe Urban from Take This to Heart Records. And, I did record Almost Famous. So that was kind of music talk, but it's a movie. So I don't really count that as strictly music talk. But yes, it's taken me a while because of having misaligned. I feel like sometimes it's harder to justify music topics for this podcast if it's someone I just want to talk to generally about music. But since this is all Apple Music, I think it works for this because we're going to get a little technical here probably.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would totally talk about this on my show too, but I think it makes more sense to kind of like send it out somewhere else, because I mean, my show is not too different from Misaligned, where you're just kind of like, for the most part, interviewing people.
Right.
I think that's how Misaligned works most weeks. So, this will be good. I'm excited to talk about it because I've been using it a lot. I've been kind of digging into the nitty gritty parts of Apple Music and trying to figure out how to make it work best for me.
Yeah, and I know at one point you and I were both using RDO, I believe is how you pronounce it. I don't know. I've heard it pronounced a few different ways.
Yeah.
So I know when that shut down, a lot of people in our little group of music tech nerds were like, oh, what do we do now? And, I think I went back to Spotify for a bit. And then as soon as Apple Music was announced, I was like, okay, yes, one music app. Thank you. But what services have you tried so far?
I went straight to Apple Music. Ardio was the best app. Can we talk about Ardio for just a second? Because Ardio was perfect. There wasn't a single thing wrong with that platform. They changed a couple things up towards the end, just maybe a couple months before they finally shut down. Mm-hmm. But that app was amazing. The level of detail to that app was insane. And like their curation was great. I really do think that like their front page and like discovery was very, very good. But like there were tiny features of that app that I still wish were in services available today, such as downloads. So, a lot of streaming services, including video streaming services now, like Netflix, they allow you to download stuff offline so you can listen to it when you don't have an internet connection. So, good examples would be when you're on the subway, when you're on an airplane, when you're out in the middle of nowhere with no cell signal. You still want to be able to listen to music and watch movies. So a lot of services are offering that now, which is fantastic. But RDO did it in a really smart way, at least for people that didn't have unlimited data plans, which 2 or 3 years ago didn't exist for the most part, unless you were grandfathered into one of those early ones. I love that with RDO, you could say, okay, I want to download this because I'm listening to it a lot. I'm going to listen to this a lot for the next 3 weeks. So let's download this and let's not do it until I get home or get connected to Wi-Fi. Because so often I would be like, okay, you know what? I want to listen to this a lot, but I don't have much data left on my plan for this month. So I'm just going to have to wait until I get to Wi-Fi. And in most cases, such as with music, with Apple Music now, you have to do it when you're on Wi-Fi to do that on Wi-Fi. Otherwise, it'll just start downloading it using your data, which is, it kind of defeats the purpose. With Ardio, it was smart, and it would just do it whenever you connected to Wi-Fi. Otherwise, it would just put it in a queue and it would wait. I thought that was so clever, and I can't believe nobody else does that. It drives me nuts.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily use that feature all of the time, because I really got into using streaming services when I was at Drexel. I heard about Spotify, started using that initially, mostly because it had the free tier. And then I'm sure it was probably Zach Zarillo who sort of let me know about RDO, and it looks so much better than Spotify did. And I know Spotify has done a lot as far as overhauling their UI and UX and everything for their apps since, my freshman year of college. But
yeah,
it was just laid out so nicely, and their new releases section really did feel a lot more tailored to your taste than even, the Apple Music one does now, because while there's a lot of stuff in the new releases section on Apple Music that I'll listen to, I still find myself having to search for specific artists and albums each week if they're smaller labels or, those smaller bands that aren't on labels that you and I are quite familiar with.
Yeah, one of my favorite discovery techniques on Ardeo specifically was the fact that they had pages for every single label. So when they pull in all this music from whatever sources they do, I'm not entirely sure how all of that works on the back end of streaming services. But when Ardeo pulled in all that music, it sorted out the metadata, and then it would create filters for when you would click on those labels' titles on a track. For instance, with the 1975, you could click on Dirty Hit, and it would bring up everything that was put out by Dirty Hit or by Vagrant. So you could do that, and you could find all of the new releases from Vagrant right away.
Right.
I'm still not sure of a way to do that with a lot of the modern streaming services. I'm not really that familiar with Spotify anymore, but at least with Apple Music, that's not a possibility. And to your point about Ardeo just being so well designed, I completely agree. And I think it's an interesting tidbit, especially now, because Acceptance, who just put out a brand new record, their biggest album, the one that kind of put them on the map, Phantoms, the designer of Ardeo was the guy that did the artwork for Phantoms.
Okay.
I just think that's an interesting tidbit.
Yeah, that definitely is. I had no idea about that, but
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough that these places offered student subscription prices too, so I was able to check out Spotify and Ardeo for the $5 a month, and Spotify frequently has like the 99 cents for your first month, so it doesn't hurt to go try that out, see what it's like, because I know with Spotify on the mobile app you cannot listen to albums in album order. It shuffles everything that you listen to, I think, or maybe that's just playlists, I don't know, but I heard that at one point on Spotify's mobile app, it just shuffled everything. You couldn't play on demand if you didn't pay for the premium account.
That sounds nuts. That would drive me insane, and I would immediately just leave. I wouldn't pay for the service just to get my albums in order. I would just be like, okay, any company that does that is not getting my dime.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll look that up, as soon as we're done here, just in case I need to correct myself at some point. But I'm pretty sure at least some portion or the majority of the mobile experience had to be on shuffle. And as someone who loves listening to an album top to bottom, that would drive me crazy, because sometimes I don't really like listening to albums on shuffle at all. I was like, if I want stuff shuffled, I'll just go make a playlist of stuff and throw in other artists too. So I think it definitely changes the album listening experience if you have to listen to it on shuffle every time.
I would never do that. I almost exclusively listen to music as an album. Like I'm very rarely playing playlists. I put together playlists usually as ways to kind of remind myself of what I was listening to at the time, years in the future. I use that as kind of a nostalgic trip. But for the most part, if I'm in the mood for something, I'm going to listen to a record. That's just kind of how I work.
Yeah, and I also have made playlists and stuff, and that's more so for songs that I don't either have the full albums for, or I just have never really listened to the full albums. Like I have an oldies playlist, and it has a bunch of Aretha Franklin, Etta James, and artists that I don't necessarily sit down and listen to their full albums. It's just like they have their hits that I really like, even though the albums are easily available on Apple Music, but I just want to listen to the hits, listen to the songs I know and the songs I like. Because if I went back to all of the Motown era and went and listened through every single album top to bottom, that would just be way more music than I am interested in listening to at the moment for that specific type of music.
Yeah, no, totally with you there. With the oldies, I had to be in a certain mood. That's not to say that I won't put on a Bing Crosby compilation and listen to that for hours on end, because there's just so much of it. But I'm with you. If I'm into oldies, that's even a good time to listen to radio. I very rarely use FM radio, but if you're interested in the oldies, it's a good thing to put on.
Yeah, definitely. And I just looked it up. So on Spotify's support website, it says Spotify free on mobile. You get ad-supported, shuffle-only access on compatible devices. This means you can't stream specific songs on demand, and you're only able to skip a track 6 times per hour. Sometimes you'll hear a mix of similar tracks from other artists to what you're playing. So if I can't even sit there and listen to an album on shuffle and they're just going to start tossing in other artists, it's like, I can't do that. I can't be any part of that.
No, that's insane. That's insanity. I think that's ridiculous. I would never pay for that.
Yeah, and it's like, aren't the ads enough already? Like, now you have to ruin our music listening experience if we don't want to pay you $10 a month.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'm good. So you're using Apple Music too, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. That's awesome. Is it just you? I saw you had notes in here for like family accounts. Or is it just you, or is your family using it too?
It is just me because I'm the only one with Apple equipment. Like, my parents are on Android phones, and at the moment they don't even have a laptop, so I'm the only one using it. But I just wanted to bring that up because there are a lot of people who their entire family is, Apple only, and for them it would make a ton of sense to do $15 a month instead of each paying for a different streaming service. And I think, obviously the $10 a month is sort of the main individual price point. But I think what Apple could do to make it a little more appealing to some people is, a lot of places will do, if you pay monthly, you pay this, but if you want it for the entire year, you can pay a couple bucks less a month. So if Apple did something like that and say offered a full year for $100 instead of $120, I think they could even grab a few more people that way.
Yeah, that's an idea. That's not bad. I used to use the family subscription plan on Ardeo. My girlfriend, my sister, and my buddy and I all kind of shared. And I think you can't quote me on this. You'd have to look back. I probably have it cataloged somewhere on my blog if it's not available on their website anymore. But I think it was like $24.99 a month. And it would get a little bit cheaper, obviously, every time when you split it and you add another person to it. And I think you could do up to 5. But I think what I ended up paying at that point was like $6.40 a month. And then everybody would just, send me whatever the amount was via cash. And that was kind of nice. It was, it was really cheap. And, looking at it now, like, it would be cool to have a family account on Apple Music. My girlfriend is actually using Spotify right now. I'm using Apple Music, so we're a little bit split up in that way. I think everybody that was on my plan is using Spotify now instead of Apple Music, except for me. But that said, I think it would be cool to have that family account. But my one concern with that and the way that they run it is, I believe you have to do like the. I'm not positive of this, but I think you have to do the iCloud family sharing to take part in the family plan on Apple Music. I think you actually have to share your stuff over iCloud, which can get really messy in other aspects of the operating system. So I'm kind of hesitant to go that direction with it, but I hope that they can open that up to just basically saying, hey, this Apple ID is going to be part of my family plan. I hope that they can do something like that, because that would be something that I would be interested in sharing with my girlfriend, even though, we're probably not entirely comfortable with sharing the other aspects of iCloud that comes with the family plan itself.
Yeah, and as you and I know from listening to various tech podcasts, family sharing has sort of had its problems just in general, not even with regards to Apple Music specifically, because I know we've probably listened to a lot of the Relay FM podcasts or something where they talk about having their kids on a family plan so they can kind of, say what they can and can't buy and sort of authorize purchases and stuff. And then you always hear these like horror stories of things disappearing or accounts getting messed up, and some people have stuff and some people don't. And it just sounds
and photo libraries. Apparently photo libraries are a complete disaster now with the family sharing.
See, I'm not much of a picture person, so that kind of works out well for me at the moment. It's like I have a ton of pictures from stuff, but I haven't taken anything recently.
Yeah, I got a lot of screenshots lately. Just looking back, I haven't taken a whole lot of photos. My girlfriend's pretty good at that. She's the one that documents my life.
Yeah, all of my photos are like books, vinyl, and food that get posted on Instagram, and that's it. I'm not in any of the pictures.
That's good. So with Apple Music, like, how long have you been using it since the initial beta, like the trial period?
I don't know if I did the beta. I might have, but I probably still kept whatever service I was using on my phone at the time just because I wasn't too sure about it. But one thing I do want to note real quick is it is extremely difficult to transfer playlists. I know there are apps, but then it's like you have to pay for the app on top of that. I believe I ended up using SongShift, and it would only transfer like 100 songs in a playlist. And I was, I had a couple of playlists that were like way longer than that because it was just like I had a genre and I just had a ton of songs being put in there as I came across them and enjoyed them. And I was like, so half my playlist is missing. This isn't cool. So,
Oh, no.
I haven't been bothered enough by it to sort of go back into Apple Music and start adding all of the other stuff, because going from Spotify to Apple Music with that app, I was just like, do I really want to pay to have all these songs, or do I not care enough at this point? So I wish there were some better way to like export playlists and then just import them. But it doesn't seem like any of the streaming services have sort of figured that out for when people switch services.
Yeah, that's one thing I wish Ardio would have done. I wish there would have been an easier way to do it from Ardio. Obviously, it's not Ardio's responsibility to link up with Apple and say, hey, let's find a way to bring our users to you. There were third-party services that allowed you to import the you got like this exported data file of all of the stuff in your library, which was nice, and you could use that with third-party systems to load that into Spotify. I don't think a system ever came into place specifically for Apple.
Right.
So there's definitely a lot of opportunity there. That's nothing that I really was too concerned with, because a lot of the stuff that I had in Ardio was stuff that I had in my library already, because at that time I was downloading a lot more stuff. I was buying a lot more stuff. I was being sent a lot of more stuff while I was working on the blogs that I was writing for at the time. So a lot of that kind of got loaded into my Apple Music that way. But I've heard similar stories from people that are trying to move their libraries from one place to the next, and it's kind of difficult with Apple. I feel like it's not quite as open because they don't have as many APIs for this as, say, Spotify or Rdio did.
Yeah, and those were services that were offered cross-platform and everything. Like, it didn't matter whether you were on Apple or Windows or if you had an Android phone. It's like you could get Spotify wherever, especially because they have a web player too. So you can just open your browser and log into Spotify. And I know Rdio was the same way, I believe. I don't recall if I used web
it did have
more
a web browser,
or if I used the Mac app. I probably just used web because I was like, why have another app on my computer?
Well, you weren't missing a whole lot, because the app version was essentially just it was just kind of a web viewer, so to speak. It had a window. It had like play buttons and everything. It interacted nicely with the play pause buttons on your keyboard. It had like the nice notifications and everything, but more or less it was a web viewer, so it was more or less the same thing.
Yeah, and I think what initially led me to Apple Music was the fact that I would no longer have to have two apps on my phone for music anymore. And as you know from having written about music even before I started doing that, when you get album advances and stuff and you want to like listen to them walking to class or something, or if you're driving or something like that, it's very annoying to have to be like, okay, so where is this album? Is this out yet? Do I have it here? Or do I have it in this app? And I think that was the main reason I instantly jumped on Apple Music, because I was like, all right, they're telling me everything's going to be in one place, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of bugs to work out with this, because that's such a vast amount of music to have in one place. But to me, the idea of having just one music app on my home screen was really pleasant.
And that's precisely why I went to Apple Music right away.
Yeah.
I didn't go back to Spotify, which I actually used before Rdio. I went straight to Apple Music because that was the big sell. I was actually considering using both Rdio and Apple Music at the same time when I found out that was going to be a possibility. I do recall Jason Tate writing something on his blog years ago. It was when Chorus first started, and he was a big Rdio user as well.
Yeah.
He spoke of the possibility, like, if RDO were to kind of cater to the music journalists that were using the app, probably more predominantly than most people, and that's probably why they closed.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
if they were to cater to us, those that get advances from people, in the way that they could give publishers, give PR agents a way to allow access to certain albums early through RDO, it would essentially be what Holix does, but through a service that also is your standard music player. So if you're an RDO user and you're listening through, the old back catalogs of the Wonder Years or Fireworks or something, when those new records come out, you could easily add that through there early when you get the advances from, the publicist or the label or whoever happens to be sending it. That was an interesting idea to me because, getting advances or getting demos from bands that want your feedback on things as they're recording and, working on songs. Like, this is something that I've been dealing with since high school now. So like, I have this huge back catalog, these archives of, albums that I got as advances that are, or maybe are not available on Apple Music. In most cases they are, but I do have a bunch of records that were put out and were pulled. For example, Roy English put out an EP years ago. It was fantastic. It was a very good record. But when he started kind of rebranding his image a little bit and breaking away from the scene a bit more and, leaning more towards the, the pop world and doing professional songwriting and stuff like that, he changed it up and he took that EP off. You can't actually buy that EP anymore. And there are similar examples with other artists in our scene. The Cinema doesn't have their first record on Apple Music now. I think they might have it on Spotify, but they don't have it on Apple Music. There are Deus Vale songs. There are songs by the singer My Favorite Highway that he put out solo twice under two different names, and you can't find those on streaming services anymore. But I have these because I bought them or they were sent to me. It's this huge back catalog, and that's why I love Apple Music, and that's why I've been really getting into it in the past couple weeks, because I've been kind of getting together all my old hard drives, which have various sections of my music library from they're kind of like chunks. So I have like 2008 to 2009 and then 2010 to 2014. They're all like separated, so I'm trying to get them all together. And Apple Music has been doing a really great job for the most part, with a few hiccups here and there, at getting all of that together and putting it in the cloud in a way that I can access it whenever I want. And I don't have to go digging in my hard drives anymore. It's just there. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. It's funny that you mentioned Roy English, because now I am wondering if I have that EP that you were talking about, because I was, I was a huge Alaska fan. I mean, I have an Alaska tattoo, so I was a pretty big fan.
Do you really?
Yeah, it just says miles don't mean anything. It's not like an album cover or anything. So I feel like it's a little less noticeable.
Oh, that's cool.
So
that's awesome. I didn't know that about you. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love that band.
It's the only tattoo I have, but like after interning at Fearless and everything, I was like, okay, like this is the band I really like from what Fearless did. And I ended up with my boss, I believe it was the second summer I interned at Fearless. I was doing publishing, and my boss just handed me a hard drive at Fearless with all of their older stuff from like when they started in the 90s. And that is totally more my thing than like Motionless in White and Pierce the Veil and the newer bands they were working with. So I was just stoked to have that. And I haven't even bothered to look and see if Apple Music has most of that stuff, because I don't know if you knew about Fearless being bought out. I believe it was by Concord Bicycle or something like that. So a lot of things have been changing at Fearless, and I have no clue what's happened with any of that music that I still have copies of.
See, that's the fun part. That's what I love. Yeah. My favorite thing in music is archiving the stuff that people won't care about in 5 years. And it's amazing how much of that stuff there is. Like, a lot of the artists that I started working with when I was in high school, they were like mid-level. They were touring bands. They were getting signed to labels. They were bigger bands, and they're demoing all the time, and they're making all these early versions of stuff before they go to the studio and record it for the LP or whatever they happen to be doing. And they would send it to me, and they'd just want my feedback, and I'd be like, "That's great. Like, keep sending it. I love this stuff." And they're like, "Well, what are you gonna do with it? Like, you're not gonna put it out." I'm like, "No, I just want to save it, because in 5 years." Right. this is going to be ridiculously interesting. It's awesome to track the progress of an artist. And, in some cases, like a fun example I have is, Taylor Thrash. I don't know if you know who Taylor Thrash is.
I don't.
But he's kind of like a power poppy pop punk singer. I'm not really sure what he's doing now. I'm not sure if he's still active with the music thing. But maybe a year or so ago, I was digging through some old hard drives. I found a band. I had absolutely no idea who they are. I think they were called Brown Eyed Deception. I think I just downloaded their demos from Pure Volume or something. I was really active on there in 2009. So I'm thinking Pure Volume or MySpace. And so I just like downloaded these at one point because I thought it was cool. I downloaded everything in 2009, didn't care what it was. And so, now in 2016, 2017, I'm going through these songs. I'm finding all these old files. I'm like, who the hell is this? What band is this? It doesn't matter whether it's good or bad, because my tastes have obviously changed. So a lot of it's terrible, but I'm
Right.
looking online to like see what this band was, where I found this, where it's still available. And in most cases, like, especially on MySpace or Pure Volume, the songs might still be listed there, but the server files are so old and they're just like wasting space. So they get flushed out.
Right.
A lot of these streaming services or social media platforms will flush this stuff out because it's not worth the bandwidth. So it's not there anymore. Even though, they uploaded it there, they thought it would be there forever. It's not there. So in most cases, like I probably have a ton of songs that a lot of people don't have. And so in the case of this Taylor Thrash band from, 2006 or whatever that I downloaded, I tweeted about it. I just said, hey, like I just found all these songs from Taylor Thrash back in 2006. He sent me an email and he's like, man, I haven't heard those songs since I was 16 years old. I don't have copies of them anymore. Can you send them to me? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So, it's cool to like go through these songs and have them in a way that, you can send them to the artists who made them, who don't even have them anymore. I find that stuff fascinating. A lot of people don't, but I think it's interesting. And what I like most about Apple Music is obviously that I can put all this on there and I can like have this available to me all the time, because otherwise I'm just like, yeah, I think I have that on an old hard drive, but it's nice to say like, oh my gosh, yeah, that band was amazing. Let me pull that up and I can play it in the car. It's a really cool thing. And I just love that that's an option with the iCloud Music Library. I think it's a huge selling point, at least for a music geek like me that, has all these old demos. And, the biggest thing, I think the first thing I probably put on my iCloud Music Library was my Beatles collection, because a bunch of it is available now, but there's so many like weird Beatles anthologies with all these unheard songs and like all these old, compilations with, their first recordings and stuff. You can't get that on Apple Music, but you can put it on Apple Music through your library. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and I probably don't have as much necessarily unreleased stuff as you do, because I don't really have bands just sending me things that they don't plan on releasing or that they're not sure if they're going to release. Usually what I'm getting is, a finished product from publicists and everything, but I do have some like demos and rarities from some other bands just here and there. Like my cousin was a huge Green Day fan and I am too, and it's mostly because of her. So she sent me and gave me some CDs to burn when computers had CD drives in them, but that's a whole other story for a different day. And so I have some of these Green Day songs that I don't think I've ever seen on Apple Music at all, and it's not a whole lot. It's maybe like a handful of songs, if that, but it's still cool to be able to have those in your library, because you're like, these aren't on their studio albums at all. So Apple Music likely won't have them because, maybe the label didn't even get them. And, it's something the band just did themselves and sort of let it come out without the label's permission or something like that. And you mostly see it with, some of these smaller bands that you and I might personally know and these smaller artists. But when you have artists on the scale that Green Day's at now, or even when American Idiot came out, having those things is just sort of cool to look back on what the band was like. And my cousin was lucky enough to be able to see Green Day play like 100 cap rooms or like play at dive bars that could barely hold anyone in them. And it's like, I don't get that experience, but if she wants to send me these things that sort of emulate that kind of experience, that's totally fine by me.
Exactly. Like the cool thing is about music, there's always somebody that is listening. There's somebody that was there for the beginning of it. And that's what's fascinating to me. Like in my local scene, I try to catalog as much as I possibly can regarding my favorite local bands. Dead Leaves being one of them, formerly Call It Fiction. I have their old demos on CDRs. Like I was there for those shows where they were just handing out CDRs, trying to get people to listen to their music.
Yeah.
Runaway Brother, like they're big, I'm a huge fan of theirs and they're friends of mine. And I like to catalog the stuff that they send me that, may or may not end up being on the record. I love that kind of stuff. And one of the coolest examples of my like latest dig through my archives is the 1975, which anybody who knows the 1975 knows that they've been around for a long time,
right? And
they've had a lot of names. They've been putting out music for years under different monikers, different band names, and luckily, I just so happened to know somebody that was kind of there for that. There's a guy named Matt Sayward. He's a guitarist in the Cape Race. They're a band out of Manchester, and I think he does A&R for Lab Records. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But he's been playing with the guys in the 1975 at shows, like, local shows in Manchester for years. And obviously the 1975 is huge. And the Cape Race didn't quite make it to the level that the 1975 did. But he has all of these songs from like their old MySpaces, all of their different stages. He had all of that. So it's awesome to like get that stuff from somebody that was there archiving his scene, because everybody's scene is completely different. They're all people that are interacting with each other at local shows. They're all supporting each other, all doing all this cool stuff. And those are the people that are going to have access to the cool old archives and demos and cool stuff like that when that one band makes it huge out of your scene. And that's what I try to do. I try to archive all that stuff. And that's what I think that's really cool. I'm going to have to send you the Dead Letter Diaries, which is the old band that came before Alaska.
Okay.
So that has like Brandon Ronsky, now Roy English, and Cam, who's doing an EDM project called Brooklyn now. But those two started this band when they were like super young, and it sounds completely different. And I'll have to send that to you because you'll think it's hilarious as an Alaska fan. But I think we're getting pretty dorky now. I realize I'm kind of gushing just because I've been going through so much stuff and I love it.
That's the whole point of this podcast. It's fine.
I know, Geekdom, right? Yeah. I'm a music geek and I love metadata and I love, like putting together all of this stuff. And so with Apple, I feel like I have more control over that, because with Spotify, I know you can load in, or you used to be able to load in your local library, but I don't think they have the option to put that in the cloud to access anywhere you are. But with Apple, like you have always in iTunes, you have access to edit the metadata and you can change things the way you want it, because with unreleased stuff and with demos and stuff like that, there's no official album art. There's no official titles. So you kind of have a level of control with that you don't anywhere else. And that's another reason that I like the system. It's nice to have the access everywhere. It's nice to have control of the metadata. But with Apple Music, and I think this kind of leads into maybe one of the cons that you have listed here, are some of the issues where you add something from your local library and the like albums that are available on Apple Music aren't being matched correctly. Is that kind of what you're dealing with?
A little bit. The most recent instance of this was I received an advance copy of the Less Than Jake album, and I downloaded it from, I'm sure it was Holics, and everything should be correct because you're already putting the song titles and the track order and everything and the album art in Holics as it is. And then I put it into Apple Music and I let it sync to the iCloud Music library, and it split it into two albums, and it had like 4 or 5 songs on one and the rest on the other. And I was like, no, why are you doing this? So I kind of had to be patient, wait for it to finish syncing, and then go in and try to edit the metadata. And it's like everything is exactly the same. I have the artist, I have the album, I have the album artist. They're all the same, and it still won't combine the album into the full album. And this is now even that the album is released. So it's like, okay,
Right.
what is your deal? Why will you not let me make this one album? And I've had that happen here and there a couple of other times, but like I mentioned to you earlier, I don't think I've had nearly as many problems as other people have had, because, you know, I've had people say, you know, like a ton of their stuff was deleted. And I do have one instance where that happened. And again, it was with advanced copies of stuff. I believe it was the Modern Baseball album and another album that was coming out around the same time their last album came out. And I think what I did was I went to remove the download on my phone or something. Yes. And it just like wiped it out completely. I was like, no, hello, I did not want to do that. And because they were advances, you know, with Holics, you can set it to only allow for one download.
Download once. Right.
Yeah. And I believe that had been done with Modern Baseball and possibly the other album. So I was lucky enough that I used Backblaze. So I was able to like pull it out of Backblaze before Backblaze updated. And I was like, oh, what am I doing? And I literally was like having a panic attack because I was like, what just happened? What did I do? I don't know what's going on. And, you know, it took me a while. I was like texting Emily Hakes because she works at Brixton, which they were doing press for not only Modern Baseball, but I'm pretty sure it was an album she sent me that I had accidentally deleted as well. And I was like, I don't know what to do. Do you know what to do? What do I do? And I was like, okay, let me just take a breath here. And then I was like, oh yeah, I pay for Backblaze for a reason. So, you know, free Backblaze advertising here today, guys. If you don't have it, you should definitely check that out. It's like, I believe, what, $50 for the entire year?
Maybe. I don't actually know, because
I think that's roughly what I pay.
I think I just came up on a year of Backblaze, but I didn't get like notification of the payment, but I, you know, still have the service and I love it. And you're not alone. Like all those concerns are definitely things that I've run into in the past couple of weeks as I've been going through my library. And I think I have some answers for you. Okay. I think I can help you out. Okay. Number one, with the problem where you're trying to match things that you've downloaded and you've uploaded, even though you, have gone back and you've changed all the metadata to match exactly what it's supposed to be according to Apple, according to what was uploaded to Apple. Sometimes that can be different than what was uploaded to Holics, specifically because it's going through the label, not the PR.
Okay.
It really just depends on who's uploading it and at what stage they've uploaded it, because a lot of times stuff that's getting uploaded to Holics will be uploaded a lot sooner, obviously, than it's going to be uploaded to Apple and be made available. So at some point, something could have changed. You know, they could have put a dash in the song title of something. They could have capitalized something where on your version it's not capitalized. But once you've put that into Apple and it's uploaded to Apple Music, it will no longer match. It only matches one time. So if you want to have that matched just so you have the one version, I would suggest this. Go into your iTunes on your computer and navigate to the artist that you're having the issue with. Go to the album, or in your case, albums, if it splits it into two sections, and select all and remove both. Don't remove both, just say delete from library. And I say that because remove download is where a lot of people get into trouble with Apple Music. And that's one of my biggest complaints. And that's something that I think they actually they very much need to change it, because it's very confusing language. It can completely destroy data. But in this case, I would say delete from library, navigate to the files on your computer, bring them back in with the correct data. Like once you've edited all the metadata, it should be good. Once you load it back in, it'll match correctly and you're going to be good to go. Now, with the remove download, that's where a lot of people are complaining. A lot of people have had some really major issues with this. I'll provide some links to some really high-profile examples of this. Jim Dalrymple from Blue
he was
had
furious
a terrible
with
experience.
Apple.
He was so pissed, and he has reason to be. And he you know, luckily he has access to Apple and he can get that data back, but most people don't. And this is something that I ran into, and thankfully Backblaze was there to help me out. But I had early versions of some. I think it was the All American Rejects. I don't know. Maybe it was like one of their first EPs. Okay. Songs About a Girl, I think. I don't know. But I had that in there, and I realized that I had messed something up. So for some reason, I had to delete it out of my library so that I could get it to resync with iCloud. And in the process, I accidentally hit remove download. Now, when you have it in your iCloud library and it's matched, it basically tells you it's in the cloud. And because you uploaded it from the files on your computer, it kind of says like, okay, it's in the cloud, but you have a download of it. Even though that's not really true because the source of it was from your hard drive.
Yeah.
It's kind of making it seem as if the source is from Apple Music and you have it on your hard drive. So if you hit remove download on your PC on something that you had on your hard drive, it will remove that download from your computer, the original files, which is wrong. It should not do that. It shouldn't touch the original files at all. And so what I'm doing now is I'm putting it all into Apple Music, and then once I'm completely finished with that, I'm going to be essentially copying my library over again to a separate hard drive as a fail-safe archive. Like, this will never be touched again. Like, it gets put on there, gets unplugged, and that's that. It's something I'm scared of, and I think it's something that needs to be fixed. But that's the biggest issue that I found with people. And apart from that, like, I think a lot of the syncing issues are just, it is confusing. And I think you have to do a little bit of research sometimes to figure out exactly how to do it right. But in most cases, you just need to, fix all the metadata so it matches the iCloud version or the Apple Music version, and then clear it all out, put it back in, and then you're good to go.
Yeah, I will definitely have to do that. I think, like I said, I've been able to fix it on some albums once the album is actually out and everything, but it's just one of those like simple things that's super annoying to have to do. It's like, why are you not working? Because I was thinking that even if it didn't necessarily match Apple Music, the fact that both of the albums matched each other would allow them to just be put into the same album that was not matched to Apple Music, but clearly that is not how logic works with Apple. So,
well, you would think that if artist Y put out album X and album X had the same number of tracks as the Apple version of album X, that it would just be able to figure that out. It shouldn't have to be case sensitive, but that's just the case.
Yeah, and I remember, I think it might have been the Menzinger's recent album. In the press copy of it, they had, different song titles for some of the songs, like some songs were followed by subtitles in parentheses, and on Bandcamp it didn't have that. So it's like, if you got the advanced copy or if you ordered on Bandcamp or were using Apple Music, it's like they didn't all match. So I was like, what is going on? Because I remember I wrote a review of that album and I had Megan editing it, and I was like, wait, why did you change my song titles? And I was like, oh, okay, apparently they're not matching everywhere else from the copy I have. So I was like, all right, we're good. But it was just one of those things where I was like, why do bands do this?
Yeah. ID3 tags definitely get interesting when you have bonus tracks coming into play, especially when there are bonus tracks that are different from album to album, like different releases. So you could have like the iTunes bonus tracks, and then there could be completely different bonus tracks that are exclusive to Target.
Yes, Target is the main one that does this too.
Yeah. It's usually like weird acoustic versions of things, but you want it all, right? So it is interesting to have to put that all together, but I haven't had too much difficulty most of the time. It's just kind of like rebooting it, so to speak, by reloading that music back into iTunes once you've cleared it out.
Yeah, and like I said, it hasn't been a major issue, but I think for me, when I had the remove download issue there, I did it on my phone, and I thought I was just simply removing the download from my phone to make more space on my phone, because if you have too much music, I don't want my phone being nearly full with a bunch of albums downloaded on Apple Music if I'm on Wi-Fi 99% of the time or something like that. So I thought I was just simply removing the download from my phone, and then I got to my laptop later and I was like, excuse me, where did this go? And that's when I was in a panic. I was like, what did I do? And I do agree that, I think the way that I thought about it made a lot more sense than just, deleting the whole thing,
Yeah, it is frustrating, and especially for someone who's not like a power user, so to speak. I think a lot of people could really get in trouble and lose some data. I mean, Jim Dalrymple is an advanced user, but he lost hours of his favorite Black Sabbath songs, or I know he's into like classic metal, so whatever that was, he lost all of these like bootleg tracks or random albums that aren't available anywhere. Like, you can't just lose that. Like, it's, in his case, it's a lot of stuff he bought. Like, he had hard copies of, and maybe he doesn't even have hard copies of those anymore. So it is confusing, and I think that there's a lot of work to be done on that. I think some of the layout on the mobile version of Apple Music has really improved. I'm still hoping that they can do something with the desktop version to make that a little more clear. And especially when it comes to differentiating uploads with like matched music as opposed to music from Apple Music, because depending on when it was uploaded, I feel like a lot of the stuff that I uploaded early on, when they did a refresh, some of it got mixed up. So if you look at some of the ID3 tags in like the details tab of your ID3 info pane, it'll say that stuff is sourced from Apple Music when it's entirely impossible for that stuff to be sourced from Apple Music. It should be located in the cloud. It should say that it's the iCloud music library, but some of that gets muddled up, and I'm not really sure how all the back end of the system works, but I think some more clarity and some more transparency on how all of that exactly functions would ease my mind in a way, and kind of allow me to know, okay, this was something that I had downloaded. Let me see if I can find that file because I need to send it to somebody. Or, okay, like, this is something from Apple Music. It's like this, it's like a newer version of a record. I need to find the older version of the record that has this different bridge. You know what I mean? Because that's something I sometimes look for. In case in point, Cartel's album Chroma. Okay. There are two versions of that record, and a lot of people don't know that because they've heard the newer record that was, put out in a mass release, but they don't know the Militia Group version that had a completely different version of, a couple of songs. There's like 3 songs that were mixed differently and have like a different bridge or something like that. But being able to go in there and differentiate the difference between the two would be a lot more beneficial. If there was just a way to say, hey, this is from your local library, or hey, this is from Apple Music, rather just saying it's all in the cloud, figure it out.
Yeah.
It does get a little mixed up.
What I've noticed is that there aren't even some consistencies between the Mac app and the iPhone app that I feel like should be there, because I just opened up both apps to confirm if I was thinking about this correctly. But when I add stuff from Apple Music on my Mac, I get the little iCloud cloud logo in the bottom left of the album. And then for stuff that I have downloaded, I don't get that there. But then on my phone, it's like there's no little cloud logo anywhere on albums I've downloaded or added from Apple Music. So it's like, just something as simple as that should be on both platforms, because I know you are probably the same way, and you're just like, can we just have some consistency, please?
Yeah, I'm not sure I entirely know what you're talking about. You mean like the cloud logo that has like the downward facing arrow?
It does not have that until I like hover over it. So I don't
really.
Yeah. So it's just like I'll send you a screenshot of what my screen.
Are you on Sierra? Because I think I'm still on El Capitan.
I am on Sierra.
So I don't think I have the newest iCloud or iTunes, so I don't know if I can speak to that. But at least on my version of iTunes, next to every single album, whether it be something that I uploaded or something that was available, it either says downloaded, meaning that it's probably matched to something that's on my computer right now, or it's in the cloud.
Yeah, so that's interesting. I don't remember if I noticed that when I was on El Capitan, but like I said, I'll send you a screenshot and you can determine if it's the same or completely different. But I just know that just between being on the most updated version on both my phone and my Mac, I feel like there should be consistency there.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Looking back at some of the stuff that I uploaded when I initially got Apple Music, it says that it's in the cloud. It just shows me the download button, but it's, that is stuff that I do have on my hard drive, and I feel like that should link to it, even if my hard drive is disconnected at some point. If it's reconnected, I feel like it should say, yes, this is downloaded, yes, this is something that you uploaded, but here is a link to that file on your computer. But if you look at the file section on the info pane, it doesn't say that. I have an old Adam Young EP that he put out before he was Owl City, and it says that it's uploaded, the location is iCloud, and I know I have that on my computer. I know it's in a folder, but it doesn't point to that anymore. However, the new acceptance album, it does say that it is there. So it's very confusing. I can't really figure out why it does the things it does. There are probably limitations to this. It is a very complex system. It's a very weird thing that they even offer this.
Right.
You know, that's why I went with Apple Music in the first place, because they offer this service that absolutely nobody else has. Otherwise, I would just have to, you know, sync all of these songs to iTunes, and I wouldn't have exactly the capabilities that I do with cloud, and being able to pull that down no matter where I am, and kind of having that backup in a way is kind of nice, even though I'm not really sure how I can retain those files if I were to lose everything. Like, say my hard drive fried, my Backblaze was deleted for some reason, but I have the music in Apple Music.
Right.
I don't know if there's actually a way to recover those files. Like, if I downloaded it to my computer, is there a way to grab those files and, you know, put them back in a folder? I don't know if that's the case. I'll have to do some more research on that, but in a way, it's nice to have it there, but I still rely on Backblaze backup. So if there's any theme to this, I would say that Apple Music is fantastic for those that have massive music libraries that are not, like the pop releases, like the versions that are never going to go away. They're always going to be on iTunes.
Right.
I would say it's for those people that are really geeky about music. But that said, if you're really concerned about losing a bunch of your music, I would still keep a sturdy backup, whether it be on an external hard drive with Time Machine or Backblaze or some other similar service. I think that's a really important part of it.
Yeah, and I definitely do both. Like, I have a to-do in my Todoist app every Saturday to back up my laptop to my actual hard drive, and that's on top of having Backblaze. But I did just send you the screenshot over Skype. So the album on the left there is one I added from Apple Music, and then the one on the right is one that I had a copy of myself. So it's like just that little cloud symbol is sort of there on all of the Apple Music releases that I've added, and you know, I'm seeing them for ones I added like 3 months ago, so it's like clearly they're in my collection, so I don't really know.
Oh, I think I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Wait, Culprit put on a record?
Yes, it just came out on Friday.
I missed that. Cool. Check out Culprit. Love that band. Yeah, I'm not entirely. This is from your phone?
This is from my Mac. So on my phone, that little cloud on the Ed Sheeran album does not show up at all on my phone, which is what annoys me, because then I'm on my phone and I'm like, wait, did I buy this, or is this something I added? And it's like there's no indication on my phone of what is what basically in my collection.
Oh, okay. Now that I'm looking at the albums view on my computer, I can kind of see the same thing. Colliding by Design does not have a little cloud on it.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why that is. I think maybe that's just saying like
hey, this is yours.
Apple Music or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. From what it seems to be, it looks like anything that has the cloud on it is something that you added from Apple Music. Right. Anything else is not.
Yeah, that's
because
what I was thinking.
Yeah, because I have Colliding by Design by Acceptance here. I have You of All People by FS, and then I have the new John Mayer EPs, and those are all ones that I uploaded myself. Everything else that I have in the past several weeks, or at least new releases, those were all uploaded to Apple Music by the artists themselves, and it was something that I added through the service. So, okay. Yeah, I think that probably is what that means. I don't know what it looks like on the phone, but I think that's what
they just all look like the albums that you've downloaded on your phone.
Yeah.
So, or the albums that you own. So that's like, to me, it's like, okay, you really can't just put the cloud on the phone. It seems so simple when you're talking about a company the size of Apple. But I heard you just mention that you are now looking at it in the album view. So that sort of brings me to my next question. I think Jason Tate and I discussed this briefly when I was on one of the Encore episodes, but how do you prefer to view your music? Because personally, I have everything in the album view all the time, and then I have it in, I believe, when you do the drop down on the library, I have it in recently added, so that, I have my advances and everything like right at the top of my collection.
And is this on your phone or on the computer?
I have it the same on both.
Okay. I don't really know, because on Apple Music, like when you go to your library, like recently added is automatically like right there. Is that something that you can change?
I think it is, because I think if you just go down to albums, then it's in alphabetical order on the Mac, for me at least.
Oh, okay. So yeah, on my phone, like under albums, it gives you title and artist. You can sort by that. Myself, I generally sort by artist. Like I'll type in the artist first because I'll know exactly what it is I'm looking for, and that's easier to me than looking up the album names because I don't always remember, the name of, Nick Santino's EP from 2014. Like I don't remember what that's called, so I'm just gonna look up Nick Santino. So I generally look. I'll look by like recently added if it's something that I like. The nice thing about Apple Music is it'll give you like recently played under the For You tab. It'll give you like playlists. You can do the heavy rotation thing, which is really nice. I really love that because I want to listen to Sprained Ankle today. So there you go. It's right. There. Julian Baker right up front. But I generally will go under artists just because that's how my mindset works. I'm very. Since I use Music Match Jukebox on my Windows 2005 computer at my parents' house back in the day, that's when I really started kicking off. My music collection was in Music Match and in Winamp. So in the early 2000s, I was very much a artist album play. Like that's kind of how I'm wired. So that's what works for me.
Yeah, and I think another thing that is sort of a pro for this is there are so many different ways you can configure your collection and different ways that you can view it so that not everyone is necessarily going to have their collection in the same order or view it the same way. And that's, apparent just between the two of us talking about it.
Oh yeah, everybody's different. I mean, a lot of people don't care. Most people, realistically, a lot of the people that are using Apple Music, they're not adding music to the iCloud music library. Like they're not even using that functionality. They're paying $9 a month and they're using, the streaming services, the album advances, or the exclusives, so to speak, that Apple gets ahead of the other streaming services like Spotify.
Yeah.
They're using it as a streaming service, and that's all it is. Like they might use the radio, they might listen to Beats One, they might listen to the curated playlist. Like, and those are all awesome features of Apple Music that I feel like we probably didn't talk about enough today. But at least for me, the big selling point is being able to add a bunch of songs that I wasn't able to have elsewhere onto the system because I used to. I probably have like probably like 5 or 6 email chains with the people at RDO, just because they would always be looking for more music to add that wasn't on there already. So they would actually reach out to artists and publishers and say, hey, like let's see if we can get your music on our platform in a way that I don't think Spotify is quite as personal about it.
Right.
So I would have lists of stuff in notes on my phone. I'd be like, okay, this is something that I want to listen to, and it's not on RDO. So I would say, hey, put this on RDO. My co-host for Bantha Fodder, this is a funny story, and I don't even know if he remembers this, but before I was doing a show about Star Wars with Mike Kamate, who is a singer-songwriter with a moniker called Old Best Friend, I was in love with Old Best Friend. I was like the biggest Old Best Friend fan there ever was. And I was on vacation with my family, and I wanted to listen to the EP so bad, but I didn't have it with me. My laptop was fried at that point. The motherboard failed. So I wasn't even sure if I had the EP anymore. Like, not that it'd be hard to get it from Bandcamp again, but at the time they didn't have an app. They didn't have an app on the phone. So I was, completely out of luck. But I wanted to listen to it so bad. It was all I was listening to at the time. And I was on vacation with my family for, a week and a half. Like, I need music, right? So I hit him up on Twitter. I'm like, hey, you should put this on RDO, and he did it. And within the hour, I had that album to play on RDO. It's just a fun story. But, to get back to what you were talking about, like, it's great to have the option to put stuff on Apple Music that wasn't on systems before. And I think that's a big selling point for me, but maybe not necessarily everybody. So what do you think? Having used Spotify probably a lot longer than I did, for the popular music fan, somebody that listens to iHeart radio stations like Kiss FM and stuff like that. What platform do you think is the best for the common user?
I would probably say Spotify, but then again, you have Apple Music getting a lot more of these exclusives. And then, obviously there's Tidal, which I don't even know. We haven't mentioned it until now, so clearly neither of us care that much for that service. But, that's probably a whole other podcast in itself as well.
I only know one person that had an account a Tidal, honestly. Like I asked around. I'm just kind of curious because I didn't need one myself. I had no reason to listen to the new Beyonce album earlier or something like that. But I just asked around, and I asked if anybody had it, and I only had one friend that had access to it, and they used it for one record, and they didn't re-up their subscription. So
yeah, I did the free trial when it was first announced that it was, switching over to Tidal, and Jay-Z was sort of running the show and everything. And I hated it so much that I was like, nope, we're done, like 2 days later.
Yeah. So you think Spotify though, right?
Yeah. I don't even know if I listened to any album in particular. I think I just did not like the UI so much that I was like, nope, I'm out. But yeah, I would probably
that's
say
a common complaint I read.
I would probably say Spotify, because more often than not, the stuff that Apple gets exclusively is going to be on Spotify eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are someone who just is more of a casual listener and you don't care to be, the first one listening to this new album, or, getting the exclusives, and you are fine with listening to, like their new music playlist that I believe they've been doing now, I think Spotify has changed a lot of their stuff to make it so that a casual music fan can sort of easily find the type of music they're looking for. And I know they've changed even more stuff since I have been using the service, but I believe Jack Appleby still uses Spotify. So I sort of hear him say things or post about things on Twitter here and there about the service, and I sort of keep up with what's going on at Spotify through him, essentially. And it seems to really work for the majority of people. I think personally, I just wanted to go with Apple Music, one, for having the single app to use for everything. But I also feel like Apple is a more stable company as well, because like when you and I went through not having RDO anymore, it was like, now what sort of moment. And I don't really see Apple Music going away. And like you said, we didn't even really get into anything outside of the library itself, because we are just such music geeks that it's like the library is where we probably spend most of our time. But a lot of people do like the Beats One aspect. So if you are looking for, that, I would say Apple Music is way better on that note than Spotify is, because yes, Spotify curates stuff, but they don't have radio shows really, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they do. I know that Spotify has really been expanding. I know they have, like podcasts as part of their platform now, which is something that Apple's had in a separate app for a long time. They do some curation. They have a lot of really great playlists. From what I understand, a lot of my friends that use Spotify really love their playlist, in probably the same way that I love the playlist that Apple Music puts together. They have a really good selection of stuff that not only caters to what you like or what you used to like, but also stuff based on genre. They have a lot of great curator lists. For example, Alternative Press has curator lists on there, which I think is really cool. They work with tastemakers and publications that really know niches in music and can pull out the stuff that's really important in certain scenes or stuff that's up and coming. I'm not sure that Pigeons and Planes has anything on Apple Music specifically, but they should if they don't, because blogs like that, or the 405, these tastemaker blogs, Hilly Dilly, these places that people go to find new stuff, they're there. Apple Music is really great at that, and I think they have a really good mentality towards personal recommendations rather than algorithmic stuff, which is something that a lot of streaming services up to this point have mostly been relying on. Algorithms are king in social media nowadays, and it was something that was very prevalent in Spotify and RDO to a certain degree. These are things that will probably persist in a lot of ways. But what I like about Apple Music, from like a common listener standpoint, is the discovery aspect that they really actually dedicate man hours to. They have people that are actually on the job, people like real life human beings, flesh and blood, that love music and can feel the music and can find new stuff that they love, and include that in lists with stuff that they know a lot of people will love or have loved. Tried and true stuff mixed with the new and refreshing kind of breaking artists. I think that's a huge selling point as well for a lot more common users that maybe aren't quite as nerdy as you and I about metadata and unreleased advances and crap that most people don't have to deal with in their inboxes and stuff. So
yeah, and plus Apple Music is really only available to those who are Apple centric as well. So Spotify obviously hits a more broad audience too.
That's mostly true. Apple Music is available on Android. It has been for a little while. I don't really know how the app stacks up, but I'm assuming it's pretty similar. When Apple announced that, I was actually kind of impressed. It means that they're really serious about the platform and that they're not quite as concerned with using Apple Music as a selling point for their devices, but rather using it as a way to bring more people into at least their software ecosystem and the way that Apple kind of approaches music. And I mean, Apple is still king of music. Like, iTunes may not be as big of a deal for a lot of people, especially as far as buying stuff goes because of the streaming generation, but they are now in streaming and they very much want to be in control of that and they want to be the king. So I think they're doing the right thing by trying to be in as many places as possible. It's not to say they'll appear on BlackBerry or Windows phones, but Android's a good place to be if you're trying to get more people using your app and paying for your subscription services.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, a lot of workplaces still use PCs too. So I feel like for a workplace, Spotify is going to be the way to go because you don't have to be like, okay, wait, which computers do we have? Can these all have, Apple Music on them or something like that, or any other service that might not be available as broadly as Spotify is? But I just switched over to my For You tab, and real quick, I want to note that my favorites mix is like way off based on what I've been listening to lately, which seems very odd because, so for anyone who isn't familiar with some of the bands in our scene, Better Off was one of the bands that had, a sexual assault scandal essentially. And they keep showing up in my favorites mix, even though I have not listened to them since those allegations came out and everything. And that whole thing played out. And, that was what, 2016 or the end of 2015 or something like that. So it's like, it's been a while and they still keep putting the song on my playlist. It's like, I haven't listened to it.
I'm not sure. Let's see.
The rest of the songs are great, but that one, I just don't understand why it's still on there.
Yeah. I think though, you can do dislikes. So with My Favorites Mix, that's not a curated one. Obviously, they don't have people working on every single user's individual favorites. But yeah, it's an algorithm. It's based on stuff that you, A, listen to often, and also B, stuff that you used to listen to often. For example, I don't really listen to Troye Sivan quite as much as I did a year ago, but he pops up in my favorites list quite often. I listen to a lot of Frank Ocean, but I don't listen to Channel Orange quite as much as I do Endless and Blonde these days, but that pops up in there as well. But something you can do if something pops up in your favorites or even more often for me in my new music mix, which is a really great playlist that shows you a bunch of new stuff that you haven't heard before, but you might love. You can tap on a song individually in the playlist on a like a 6S or 6 Plus S device or whatever. You can force touch on it and it brings up a little window. It has all the normal buttons: add to library, play next, play later, etc. But at the bottom it has a love and dislike. So if you hit dislike, it's much less likely to play something similar to that in the future.
Doing that immediately.
So in the case of something like Better Off, you could do that. You're probably better off.
Yeah, I probably just need to go through and see if that album's still even in my collection. I mean, there's a good chance that it is, just because I get so much stuff that if I got an advance of this and then that all unfolded, I probably did not have it still on that same initial screen that I see in my recently added collection, because I probably would have had, X amount of records that I added myself or more advances that I received. So, I wouldn't have necessarily noticed right away if it was still there. So, it's just interesting to me though, because I listen to a ton of the country music playlists on Apple Music, and there is not a single country song in this favorites playlist.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. I think it's based mostly, I think it's all stuff that's in your library. I don't think it plays anything in the My Favorites mix that's not in your, well, I don't know.
But a lot of the country songs are in my library as well. Like I have all the Carrie Underwood albums, I'm pretty sure. And it's just funny to me because I was like, I haven't even listened to some of these, like the Dead Leaves and Pine Split in so long. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I do enjoy
hey, that's a good
these
split.
artists. You know, there's Yellow Card, Jimmy Eat World, the Black Keys, Lieutenant, Somos, Sundressed, a ton of bands I do listen to on this playlist. It's just odd to me that they're considering it my favorites when there's so much other music that I've been listening to more frequently on Apple Music and in my library in general.
I think it's a double-edged sword. I think it gets better and maybe possibly worse the more you listen, because at least with me, the more that I've used Apple Music, the more it definitely pulls stuff that I actually love. But it also depends on your mood. Like, you know, I love Breaking Benjamin. I'm not ashamed to admit that, but I'm not always in the mood for Breaking Benjamin. But there's pretty consistently at least one Breaking Benjamin song on my favorites list, because there are times when all I listen to is Disturbed, Breaking Benjamin, all those like butt rock bands that I loved in middle school. But most of the time, I don't necessarily want to hear that. I want to hear something like Amberlynn or Selena Gomez, or something like that. So it is hit or miss. I mean, it's a playlist and it's made by a computer, so it kind of does the best it can, but it's not always perfect.
I just thought that was a funny fact because I was like, all right, I've listened to the A-list country playlist, the Carrie Underwood Essentials. I've been listening to John Mayer, and it's like none of these things have shown up in here remotely. But I know you still have a few things that you want to get to before we go, and lyrics is another big thing about Apple Music. And personally, I haven't seen any lyrics on Apple Music. I don't know if I just don't look for them or I just don't care enough, because more often than not, if it's not in advance that I'm listening to, it's stuff I already know all the words to. So I don't know if I've just, never stumbled across it, because I remember when I first started using Apple Music, it was just like kind of bumbling my way through it and being like, what does this do? What does this do? Because these things don't come with instructions.
Yeah, I don't think lyrics was always there. I think it's a fairly new addition. I'm not entirely sure when it first came into play, but it's there now. When you're on the now playing screen, with whatever is playing, it shows you the album art, it shows you the progress meter, the play buttons, and then underneath, like the shuffle and repeat buttons, there is a lyrics hide or show, and you can hide or show that depending on if you want to listen to it or not, and or if you want to read along while you're listening to the music, if it's available. So the source of this is kind of interesting. I've done a little bit of research on it. I haven't been able to exactly pin down exactly how it's all going in there. I know for a fact that they're not just pulling it from a service. There are no public APIs for lyrics anymore. This is a fairly recent development, probably within the past 5 years. Any APIs that there were for lyrics from sites like A to Z Lyrics or gosh, I don't even know what else is still around. But those lyric websites. Genius is another one. Any of those sites that used to have an API that would allow programs to pull that music in, that is all gone, because using an API like that is actually like, it's a huge breach of licensing issues. So when you pull that stuff in and you're literally copying the lyrics, that's actually that's infringement. So that's why you see a lot of the old lyric sites kind of dying out, and the other ones that still exist have either been bought out or are in partnership with bigger companies that can afford to pay for those licenses. So in the case of Apple Music, it's not pulling those in like maybe some services in the past on Spotify when they first introduced apps maybe did. From what I understand, there are people that are going through and they are putting lyrics on things that didn't have lyrics uploaded in the metadata when it was uploaded by the publisher or by the artist. And because of that, you find a lot of mismatched lyrics. At least in my experience, either it doesn't have anything because it was something that was matched from my library and it doesn't match up with something that had lyrics downloaded. In the case of the new Bogues EP that came out last year, which is fantastic, please, people, find it, Bogues, Mulligan. It's amazing. All of the lyrics are there for the first 4 songs, but the last song, it does not have the lyrics for, and I'm still not quite sure why that is. If I want to, I can go in and I can, copy those lyrics from Bandcamp, and I can put that in Apple Music myself, using the ID3 tags and using the lyric tab. But as far as Apple Music's lyrics go, it's mostly like human curation, unless the music was uploaded by the people themselves. So you can submit corrections. I'll have a link to that in the show notes. I'll pull that up and I'll put that in here. I've put in a couple for songs that I just know are just blatantly wrong. These lyrics just aren't correct. So you can submit corrections. I'm not sure quite how long it takes to do that. I haven't followed up on any of those, but there is a way to do that. It's kind of messy, but that's just kind of the way it is because of licensing issues. So that's definitely a thing. But I put that in the show notes because I actually did get a question when I mentioned that I was going to be on the show tonight talking about this. I got a question from Nick Yakovazi. Nick, please, if I said your name wrong, forgive me. I know he used to have taco in his name, so I think it rhymes with taco. Yakovazi. I think that's right. It's a cool
sounds
anyway.
like you're saying it right based on looking at the name. So hopefully.
I think so. Anyway, Nick is really cool. Nick used to work for a publication called Highlight. He works for Another Great Day Entertainment right now. So he gets to work with some really cool artists on publishing issues, and he's actually working on a panel right now that's going to be at the ASCAP Expo.
Nice.
And so far they have confirmed Desmond Child and Aloe Black to speak on the panel. Aloe Black, a lot of people know because he's a songwriter, but he's also been on a couple songs. But Desmond Child was a co-writer on Bon Jovi's "Living on a Prayer." So a lot of people don't know who he is, and that's the reason he's on this panel, because Nick's kind of researching why songwriter credits don't appear on streaming services. Since streaming services are the place where a lot of people are looking at music or listening to music, that it's kind of the place where you would expect songwriter credits to be. For those that find it important, that's the place you'd think you'd be able to find it rather than having to look it up on Wikipedia or something. A lot of people don't know who Desmond Child is because when you're listening to "Living on a Prayer" on Spotify or Apple Music, it doesn't say also written by Desmond Child. It's not as big a deal as performed by Bon Jovi. So his question was, he just wanted some insight on why songwriter credits aren't attributed on streaming platforms in metadata or anywhere else in the interface. So in the case of Apple Music, which is mostly what I can speak to, and from what research he's done, he's found that Spotify doesn't show this anywhere. If the music is available with lyrics, for example, with Bon Jovi's "Living on a Prayer," Desmond Child is a co-writer for the song, but if you look it up, obviously it's not going to say by Desmond Child. It's going to say by Bon Jovi from "Slippery When Wet." Now, you could look at the lyrics, and in some cases, depending on where it's sourced from, I think if it's uploaded by the artist, obviously they could put this in here, but usually at the bottom of the lyrics, at the very end of the song, it'll say "written by so-and-so." And this is where it should say Desmond Child. In this case, it does not. It also probably does not show it in the metadata. However, it is an option. So when I was talking to Nick about this today, I was kind of looking at some songs, and in most cases, stuff that I found on Apple Music and added to my library does not have the songwriters available, but some of it is there. Depending on if you get it from Apple Music, or if you load something into the Apple Music library from your personal collection, depending on the metadata that already exists, it could say that there is a slot in the ID3 tags for composers. This can be used if it's like a sonata, you could put like Bach or Beethoven, whoever it happens to be. Or you could use this as a section to put the songwriters. And in some cases, people do that. Chance the Rapper is one of them. He's very good at giving credit. He does use the ID3 tags to give songwriting credit for his songs. I've seen this in other artists as other examples, but in most cases, it's not there. So it's an interesting thing. I don't really have any answers for Nick as to why this happens. I can say that in some cases, it does show songwriting credits at the end of lyrics on Apple Music. Some cases, it does not.
Yeah, and real quick before you wrap this up, I just clicked on the Ed Sheeran album that we were talking about earlier briefly, and in the composer section it has it grayed out, but it says mixed, and then right under that there's a checkbox where you can show the composer in all views in Apple Music. So that's an easy way to sort of just enable it if you sort of want to have that information on your screen all the time too.
Yeah, I mean, those checkboxes are there. I love the ID3 tags. I wish there was support for more of them. I don't know if ID4 is in progress or if that's even going to be a thing, but I love the option of putting more stuff in there. I know that you can really bloat the file size of something with ID3 tags, not necessarily from like the text that you add, but album art. I'm not one to shy away from putting in multiple instances of album art. If an album or single had multiple covers, I'll put those in there just because I'm a metadata freak and I like to have that catalog. But yeah, so Nick, I know we talked about this today, but anybody who's interested in that, you can read more about that online. You could probably do some research and find out exactly like why songwriter credits aren't in ID3 tags. Spotify does not seem to have a way to display this in their UI. Nick also has that panel coming up at the ASCAP Expo. So if you're there, check that out. He tells me that it's going to be recorded as well. So if we get links to that at some point, maybe I can have Dina stick this in here in the future. But yeah, so there's that. Lyrics are cool to have on there. I definitely use them all the time when they are available, but it is very frustrating when I listen to something and, especially if it's like one song in an album of songs that does have lyrics and the one song does not. It is very frustrating, but I like that it's there and I don't have to pull something up online and go to Genius and scroll through that without accidentally clicking 1,000 links and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to like make an effort to try and pay attention to what has lyrics and everything because like I said, obviously with our advances and everything, we won't necessarily get the lyrics in Apple Music for those. But, like I said, I just added that Ed Sheeran album that also came out on Friday. So, I can go probably in that release and might have a better chance of finding lyrics just because of it being such a major release.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, keep an eye on it. I'm always interested in that. So let me know what you find out, and let me know if you figure out those iCloud issues too.
Yeah, definitely. And I know Federico Vitici is a good guy to follow if you want to know about Apple Music stuff, because I feel like he's always doing new things. And I'm like, you could do that with that?
Yeah, I've found a couple workflows that are really cool if you use the workflow app. I found a couple things where you can like tweet the song you're currently listening to. You can tweet. What's really cool is you can tweet like the most listened to songs of that week, and it'll make like a little diagram of all the album art. It'll make like one photo that stitches together all the album art. That's really cool. So you can find that kind of stuff on there.
Yeah, I have stolen a lot of workflows from him, and I really need to use that app more because I feel like I just have it sitting there and 99.9% of the time I forget about it. So, it's one of those things that I think is really cool, but, I'm not that great with creating workflows myself. So it's like anytime Federico posts them or has articles that include workflows, I'm like, yes, I will read this and I will take all of these and then probably forget to use them.
Yep, that's me too. Yep.
But yeah, I'm sure we could probably do a whole podcast just on workflows as well.
Maybe I use some, but I don't use them as often as I do as I should. The people that work at Workflow are really cool, and a lot of them are huge music fans. There's some really cool people to follow over there, but as far as like workflows go, I don't have that much of a need for some of them. I do use some workflows on a daily basis, but I'm also not as great at making them. I use them to download files, share availability. I have a button that I made that I can just play Frank Ocean's Blonde on demand. It's on my home screen. It's just the album art, and I tap it, and it just starts playing, which is really fun. It's a great app.
Yeah, you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. Well, thank you so much, Jacob, for coming on. This was definitely fun to sort of get all of these thoughts out. We've gone almost an hour and a half here, and I did not think we would talk about Apple Music this long, but it's like once we get going, it's like so hard to stop talking about certain things. And
I could go for ages. I could go for ages, especially talking about like all the weird stuff that I've been finding in my computer. That's why I wanted to do this. I just wanted to talk about all the cool like weird stuff that I've been finding. So I've been tweeting about it on Twitter too, which is fun. A bunch of people like kind of get involved and they're like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot this existed. And that's the cool part. I love that. Love music.
Yeah. And like I said, totally the whole point of this podcast is to just sit here and geek out about stuff. And I know you've obviously been on a couple times before, so we've already been through this. So I feel like you and I kind of have this down for just geeking out about things and just going with it. And hopefully other people enjoy this too and find some of the information useful because, you told me things I didn't even know about the app. So hopefully, the listeners enjoy it as much as we enjoyed talking about it. But again, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, absolutely no problem. I'm by no means Apple Music Pro, but I do use it quite often. So if you have any questions about Apple Music, you can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Jacob Tender, and I'm down to answer questions or figure whatever your problem is out, because I want to know more about it too.
Yeah, and we will definitely have a lot of links in the show notes so you guys can quickly access any articles we mentioned, any of the other things we mentioned, and I'll put Jacob's links in there too so you can find him. And as always, you guys, thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.